and you're very welcome back. It must be the last Tuesday of the month because I'm joined by Andy Lambert of Content Cal. Andy, hi, how are you?
Hello. Yes, doing well. Thank you. Doing well.
Listen, you're here for another social media news slot. I facilitate, you do all the hard work, and I get to ask the questions. I love it. I was just saying to you before we came on live that this is almost like what I look forward to every month. Some people like The Line of Duty at the moment and other shows on Netflix. I'm all about the social media content. So listen, we have some more data. We know the good people at Hootsuite and We Are Social. Give us that amazing global and country by country breakdown of social media, internet and digital use. But it's April and they've come in with another quarterly report. What's been happening?
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on. And it's kind of like subtle changes as well. Because naturally, there's quite a lot of data in that huge report. There's 200 slides. So I typically, for some kind of weird, perverse reason, I enjoy reading that amount of data. So I managed
That's why you're Andy.
So I can kind of distill the kind of meaningful stuff out of it, hopefully. So yeah, do you want me to start diving in and start sharing?
Then you can share your screen. It's brilliant. And I'll take some notes and see if people have questions throughout. So let's do that.
Wonderful. Can you see my screen okay before I begin?
There we go. We can see it now.
Wonderful. All righty. So, right, let's get a timer on my phone to make sure I don't overrun horrendously because I get very excited about this as a topic and there is a lot to cover. So this is our kind of a regular monthly slot now, last Tuesday of every month. So hello again. Welcome back if you saw previous ones and welcome to any new faces. So let's start with the data. Right. Hopefully you got a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a lot of information coming your way. So this is the report that Joanne was referencing. This is social media use around the world. This is their Q2 update. So a couple of things I want to direct your attention to. That killer statistic in the middle, 13.7% increase in the usage of social media, which means 521 million new people have been added to social channels in the last 12 months. So that's the biggest annual growth that we've seen in social media in kind of true numerical terms. Utterly massive. But what that's kind of manifested as is now 4.33 billion people across the world actively use social. So this is people that log in once a month. That's 56% of the world's population. So we've now kind of tipped the balance that there's more people actively using social than not using social. So, you know, incredible growth that we've seen. Now, that growth obviously gets split across multiple different platforms. Facebook has stayed pretty static. It's still the leader. Right, stayed static, but it can't really grow that much more because it's already used by near enough half the world. YouTube, that's been a big growth. That's been a big, winner throughout the pandemic. We'll talk more about that as we go on. But YouTube's been a big growth area. Instagram's been kind of steady growth. It was kind of 1.1 billion when we did this. I think it was at the beginning of this year. So that's good growth. TikTok is on a march to become, still the fastest growing app in terms of monthly active users. We'll talk more about TikTok, but that's still growing fantastically, although its growth trajectory has kind of leveled out slightly. Snapchat's had a really good time of late. So Snapchat's really started to pick up again. Same with Pinterest and Reddit, and also Twitter. And we're going to talk a lot about Twitter, actually. They're having a bit of a kind of renaissance, if you will. Whereas Twitter kind of like been in the doldrums for quite a while. Not many new features, user growth maintaining, like being quite static. But now we're starting to see a lot more. We're going to deep dive into some of those features. This is actually one of my favorite slides throughout the whole of this, is because when we look at this growth across social platforms, that growth obviously manifests across multiple different platforms. And it's important to note that users don't just suddenly say, all right, well, now I'm on Instagram and that's where I am. Users will have on average about 6 to 7 different social media profiles. So what's this data showing? It's a bit of a complex slide to kind of get your head around initially. But what this data is showing is that your audience are across multiple channels. And this slide absolutely demonstrates the importance of a multi-channel content strategy. Let's take Facebook, for example. So only 0.7% of users are unique to platform, which means basically everyone is on another platform as well as Facebook. So if Facebook is your kind of main part of your strategy, then you've got a 75% user overlap on YouTube, on Instagram. So both incredibly highly likely that your users are on those two. And, as you can see, about half of them are on Twitter. So actually, if Facebook is your core part of your strategy, it makes sense to kind of expand that into multi-channels, including YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, for example, because it's all about how we improve the distribution of our message. And this data really helps kind of demonstrate that. And hopefully you can kind of use that to inform your social strategy. Now, this is kind of new data into this, which I didn't speak about before. And this is people's favorite social media platforms. If people could only use one platform, what would they choose? So this is kind of new research. So this is not driven by growth numbers. This is it's still quantitative data, but kind of using other people's perceptions. It's interesting how much of a share WhatsApp gets. WhatsApp has been a big winner throughout the pandemic because of people gravitating more towards kind of more private community. We'll talk more about WhatsApp as we go on. Facebook, interestingly, we like to kind of pick holes at Facebook a little bit because they growth isn't as good, and Facebook doing this, aren't they doing that terribly? Facebook are by no means whiter than white, but still lots of people rank them as if you only had to use one platform, what would be their go-to? So that's quite interesting. But Instagram continues to maintain, really good reputation and really good growth trajectories. And if we look at those favorite social platforms by age and gender, I think this is quite an interesting one, which we can kind of use alongside that kind of multi-platform slide that I was showing a moment ago to help inform our social strategies. Because we can start to think, well, if we're targeting a younger demographic, this is younger females, Instagram is the one that kind of reigns supreme here. And then WhatsApp is a really powerful source or favorite channel, basically, for those 35 and up. Basically the same if you look at a male demographic, although that skews from 25 to 34 slightly more towards Facebook. So this can help us orientate around like our primary focus for our social channel, and then we can use the data from a couple of slides ago to look at how we might think about how our potentially Instagram-led strategy should manifest across multiple other different platforms as well. So that's the kind of the main takeaways from that Q2 report that We Are Social and Hootsuite put together. But there's some other data points that I like to cross-reference so we can make sure that we're kind of having a nice balanced view of the world. So what I've been showing you there is global data. This is now US. US is also showing a significant uptick in YouTube, real nice, healthy growth curve of Instagram here, and WhatsApp in the ascendancy as well. That's also replicated by this report, because this was some research out of UCAS, so the UK, I don't actually know what it stands for, but this is about first-year students.
Yeah, it's the college administration system.
Thank you very much, Joanne. You've saved my blushes there. Appreciate it. So this is a very different demographic, but it kind of shows very similar data, which is interesting. Although Facebook is much more pronounced in its drop in popularity in that demographic. What you can see is YouTube maintaining, consistent popularity is the second one. And you'll see the same Instagram growth curve. So, Instagram is showing really healthy signs here of, growth across the US, in the UK, in a younger demographic. Snapchat is kind of petered off a little bit, but, it's still like the fourth favorite platform. And then once again, kind of WhatsApp is ticking up and up and up. We're going to talk more about kind of private social media as we go on. But it's interesting to see how the kind of growth trends from a global US and to a real kind of specific community in the UK are being quite consistent. So let's look at some kind of like spotlights on stuff, and feel free to interject me at any point as well, Joanne, if you want to add any kind of additional context. But I want to touch on like social commerce, which I know for this community isn't going to be like the number one priority, but it's quite interesting to see how things are evolving in the kind of digital environment. I won't go through all the data because it's clear that social commerce is absolutely in its ascendancy, and it's very much where many platforms are orientating towards. And the way that people are typically organizing around social commerce, there's kind of 5 main ways that manifests: through buttons that redirect to online shops on social, shoppable posts and stories, which has been a big push from like Facebook shops and Instagram shops, ads with kind of call to actions that takes to sales pages, peer-to-peer buying and selling. That's a new one. We're going to talk more about that in some of the updates, and social commerce plugins. So like businesses like Shopify, which have helped so many small businesses, transform their e-commerce and make their e-commerce become social commerce by integrating into social sites like Pinterest and Facebook and Instagram. So there's a big spectrum of opportunity in social commerce, and as a result, that's very much driving the growth of social. And what you're going to see as we go through, and the reason this is quite important as a trend, is that it's showing that social media is evolving away from having 100% reliance on ads for its revenue, where social media channels are starting to derive their income from other sources, ways that other people are monetizing. So whether it's selling products directly on social or selling their own expertise. And that's something we're going to cover later on.
And I'll just touch on that. While strictly, my community in government and public sector aren't interested in the commerce piece, what is really important, and this is why you keep bringing it up, is because it's the change in consumer behavior, because they're spending more time in app, because it's becoming more relevant to their daily lives, and the apps are battling for attention. So they're asking themselves, why do people leave our app and where do they go? Well, they research on social, perhaps for a product or a service, and then they leave, and then they go to a website of choice, a swipe up, and then they exit. From a government and public sector point of view, you guys need to think about the customer and the citizen expectation around social experience. They expect the experience from research to consuming a public service to getting information to happen on social. So I think this is why I always say to you, keep those slides in, they're relevant.
Nice. Okay. Yes. Fantastic context. And something that I found particularly interesting is this case study that came out yesterday for a cosmetics brand in the UK. But interestingly, they've seen a 333% increase in their conversions when they started to put users using the product at the bottom. So, here you'd think you're at the final point, you're on a sales page, someone's going to buy this product, but actually they're finding user generated content at the bottom, clicking on that, and then more likely making the purchase directly through this little bit I'm hovering over here. So it actually goes to show that kind of human user generated content piece is a more defining or driving consideration and conversion factor than just a typical sales page. And as you say, Joanne, that has kind of ramifications for how we use social content in terms of understanding the things that are driving impact for our communities and for an audience. So YouTube is increasing popularity. For me, I talk about this lots because I spend a lot of time doing social media strategies for our clients, focusing predominantly on UK and US businesses. Obviously, Joanne is expert on the subject matter too. YouTube is always conspicuous by its absence, and it shouldn't be. Like, YouTube has grown faster than any other platform from a numerical perspective, not in percentile terms because it's so massive, but in terms of user numbers, YouTube has grown faster than anything else. I mean, look at this number, like 18 to 29 year olds, 95% of them say they're actively using the service. We've been speaking about how much Instagram's been growing, but it's so meaningfully more significant how many more people use YouTube. YouTube is such an important channel, and often not thought about as part of a content strategy. So very tactical one here, but I read some research on this which backs up a theory that I think most people kind of would know, but it's nice to see evidence to back it up. Basically, don't post links on LinkedIn. LinkedIn hates it because posts without links get 6 times more reach, have 4 times more reactions, and 18 times more comments based on this kind of research here. I've linked to all of the research papers as part of this as well. But yeah, LinkedIn link posts, don't do them. Put your link in comments. Very tactical thing, but it will help drive LinkedIn growth. Talking about growth takes on to ROI. And this was some data out from LinkedIn. I absolutely loved it because content marketers typically get reporting entirely wrong, in the sense that, yes, it's important to look at metrics like likes and engagement growth and that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, content marketing and the growth of content marketing is about a long-term game. typically what this data is saying is that far too many marketers spend their time like looking in too short a time frame to determine whether something was good or not, trying to optimize their campaigns in the first 2 weeks or a month. The best analysis happens a quarter or 6 months down the line, because content marketing is a long-term growth initiative. So it's important that we kind of reflect that objective through how we report. So that's where kind of monthly reporting will actually miss quite a lot. It would be much better to kind of use our reporting periods over a longer period of time. And that is where the opportunity for trying to kind of link content marketing to ROI has definitely is. We've seen the same thing at Content Cal. We fall into this trap before, doing kind of weekly and monthly reporting. As soon as we switch to like quarterly reporting, when you take a more of a step back look at things, you get better perspective and you can start to link content marketing to more kind of positive growth trends within the business. Long-term ROI is the name of the game here. Podcasts have been a kind of niche thing for many years, and they've started to come into the ascendancy over the last 4, and really the pandemic's kind of kicked them off even more, to a point that we've always known that we can get our podcasts on Spotify or Apple, for example, but now they're doubled. Both of those organizations are doubling down on it now, making podcasts a kind of subscription type of approach. So people who run podcasts on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, they can now start charging for subscriptions for those. Now, that might seem quite a niche thing, but it has significant ramifications, because now actually you can start to see further a trajectory away from podcasts being just a channel to promote content as to raise awareness or whatever. And it still absolutely serves that purpose. But you're actually starting to see like content as the actual endpoint, the destination that people are starting to pay for. And as a result, that actually opens up more advertising opportunities, placement on podcasts, and it also just further increased the popularity of podcasts. And we haven't seen the end of this. This is very much the kind of, we're at the early stages in the advent of real growth of podcasting. You'll have heard about it lots. You haven't missed the boat on podcasts yet. Spotlight on privacy. You might have heard this already, but next week, Apple's iOS 14, I think it's called IDFA update. Very sorry about all the jargon. Basically, it means that if you're an iPhone user, when you're using an app, Facebook, Instagram, it's now going to say, allow tracking, or allow or ask app not to track. So now it's going to become very clear for users, do you want an app to track you? The estimation is that about 90% of users will opt out of being tracked, which will have significant impact for advertisers advertising on Facebook and Instagram, because ultimately we're getting less data back. So I think whilst I don't want to have too much conjecture on this at this point, because it's going to happen next week. We'll have to see how this all kind of plays out. But it starts to think, is social media evolving in general away from reliance on ads? And as we as a society become more aware about being tracked and being listened to and served content in a kind of spookily accurate way, is that creating more of a kind of resurgence of organic content, smaller communities potentially? So, and I think that whole smaller community thing is very much a burgeoning and a very interesting area, because you can already see this. This is data from UCAS, of which I won't go into this because they did a survey of first-year students, where predominantly a lot of their interactions are happening less on, broadcasting on social. There's still an element of that. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's all moving away from sharing everything on Instagram. But ultimately, we're starting to see more and more of a take up of like private communication, whether it's WhatsApp or House Party or Facebook Messenger chats, Instagram DMs, that kind of stuff. So they're the trends. Let's go kind of line by line of what's new then. So let's look at Facebook. So some really good updates from Facebook, because now we can limit who can reply to posts. So if you're a business that typically gets kind of slightly unsavory comments regularly, and you're putting out something which maybe is sometimes could be seen as controversial, you now have the control to limit who can reply to that, which is a fantastic thing to make social media feel like more of a safe space. Although the irony of it becomes inherently less social, but I understand the need for it. Facebook Analytics is retiring. So if anyone uses Facebook native tools to drive their analysis, so Facebook Analytics is going away. Still, some of the insights will remain in Facebook Business Manager. So it's not like you can't do any analysis on Facebook. But what we've been building at Content Cal is this advanced analytics suite. So this is our product that we've built because we are cognizant of Facebook Analytics going away. So we built all of that within Content Cal anyway. So no one's going to miss out. So sticker ads are coming to Facebook stories. So we've just been speaking about the future of ads. So, but naturally it still drives a lot of revenue. So you can start to see how sticker ads work in stories. So you can start advertising here, and it kind of renders as this little sticker here. You can now export all of your posts and notes to Google Docs directly from Facebook. So in a rare move about transparency and ease of use, Facebook have allowed you to kind of take everything you've ever posted to your Facebook page and keep a record and audit of that. It's a really nice thing to do to keep that for your own purposes, just in case you ever want to reuse it. And also nice to feel that you've got time, you spent a lot of time creating this stuff. It's nice to have like a permanent record of it rather than it being, entrusting that to Facebook. Facebook are also improving the way that people can discover new topics as well. So they're suggesting topics in the feed. You will have seen this in loads of other type of apps, right? It's a familiar type of experience where you opt in for topics you're interested in and can follow said topics. That then kind of creates some interesting changes in how people experience the algorithm, right? Because now Facebook's recommendation engine, and basically what you're served, is determined on things that you've interacted it with, like people you've interacted with, comments, etc. But now there's going to be an evolution of this where people that are following certain topics now will be encouraged to, now will be shared relevant topics. So there's nothing we can do as businesses or as organizations to control that, but it's just kind of interesting to see. And it's also a kind of nice play in that, organic content still is being, it's still a consideration for Facebook. It's not all about ads. Facebook related discussions. This is powerful, and this is about trying to increase engagement on certain topics. And this is the big part of Facebook's ambition. And it's important that I think we're all aware of that, because we know what Facebook are rewarding. Facebook reward engagement, so people interacting, comments specifically, because Facebook can't really grow that much more in terms of users, but it can grow a lot more in terms of the time that people are spending on the app. And that is the thing that drives Facebook's economic engine, is the amount of time people are spending on it. So Facebook reward comments. So the more comments you get, the better your post will do. That's one fact. But what they're doing here is that you'll be starting to be served in discussions that Facebook thinks you might be interested in that have been surfaced from other public groups, Facebook groups that is. So that actually then, one, creates a nice experience for the user to kind of find topics they should be engaging with, but it also then tells a really nice story as to why we as businesses and organizations should have a Facebook group, because they help discovery of content far better than a Facebook page with this update. But it's worthwhile noting that this is limited then to public groups, not private groups. Now, new feature alert from Facebook. They're testing this new feature called Hotline, which despite
that just sounds ominous.
I know.
Hotline.
Sounds a bit seedy to me.
Who's at the other end of that hotline?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not convinced of that name. So it might well change before, I hope it does, before it gets launched. But the idea of this is a bit of a kind of Clubhouse alternative, but I do like its slightly different approach. It's great for those kind of ask me anything type of scenarios, like AMAs that you might do with people. And it's like an interactive podcast in a sense that people can submit questions, people can upvote questions, and then they can be asked to the speaker. So this is just audio only, but it's kind of like a more structured Clubhouse event, whereas Clubhouse is kind of unstructured. The speakers just goes off on a tangent. This then has a lot more kind of structure and purpose to it, which I quite like. But that's just one part of a 4-part audio strategy. So yeah, lots of new products incoming. So let's go through them. Facebook Live Rooms is basically exactly like Clubhouse. All of this stuff coming in the next couple of months. So as you can see, if it's built on the same thing as Facebook Rooms, which you would have seen before, which was like a video. It's like having a Zoom meeting, right, on Facebook. but this is about live rooms audio only. So people could be going live. So Joanne could be going live. We could see the room that Joanne was in. We could join that. We can listen in to the conversation that Joanne's having, audio only. Obviously, put our hand up, ask questions, etc. Now, the third of the four things that they're releasing is Facebook Soundbytes, which is audio only posts. Twitter did this with audio tweets a couple of months back. Oh, I think it was late last year. So really betting on the power of the human voice. It hasn't really taken off on Twitter, so nothing to suggest that it will do necessarily on Facebook, but it looks quite interactive and engaging. Plus, it's another way to talk about accessibility of content, and I think that's a really important thing to think about certainly for public sector organizations. You know, I know like alt text and alt tags are an important part of it, but you know, when you can start thinking about, is there other ways that we can encourage our individuals, our community to engage and interact with our content? This provides another experience. And the more balanced we can be of our content strategy, like a bit of video, some audio, some visual, then we kind of encompass all users' preferred style of like learning and absorbing information. So yeah, I definitely welcome the flexibility. Facebook are really helping like podcasts. Sorry, Joanne, did you want to chime in on that?
No, I'm writing some notes for afterwards. Keep going.
Cool, perfect, cool. Facebook podcasts, they're pushing down the route of podcasts. They're doing a partnership with Spotify on this. And as you can see in this screenshot here, making it much easier for you to kind of provide links and assets to your podcast. Whereas sharing a podcast on Facebook today is just like sharing a link, but now it's going to be much more intentional. So that's a really good update. Basically, 4 things that Facebook are doing all around audio. So lots happening there. Instagram ads are coming to Instagram TV. Don't need to say much more than that, other than it's another advertising format. Remixing comes to Reels. Right. Yeah. Remixing is a content theme type content approach, I think might be a better word, in its own right. Popularized by TikTok with their duets functionality, it has become core. This is a thing, has become key to why TikTok has grown so quickly, because it's all been about like how you can riff on other people's content. So, you know, Joanne might do something and I might build on it. And that's how kind of like trends and viral content happens, when people, you know, have a different take on something. And remixing is what this is all about. So actually to hopefully kind of connect around an experience of it. This wasn't used in any kind of remixing style, but if you think about how, you know, a few years ago, the Ice Bucket Challenge evolved, right? And that's kind of remixing of a content theme and how that evolved over time. So remixing is a really important part of our content strategy. We'll talk more about it as we go on anyway. Just like with Facebook, Instagram are introducing new tools to protect from inappropriate behavior, being able to hide comments and being able to hide any message requests as well. So if you feel like you're getting too much kind of negative commentary or too many trolls, you can now start controlling that, which yeah, definitely recommend. This is only relevant to those with over 10,000 followers, but you've always been able to add links to stories. So when people swipe up on a story, they can go visit something. They can make it even easier now. So Instagram are launching a link sticker, which you can add to your story, but you need to have over 10,000 followers anyway. Ads are also coming to Instagram Reels as well. So lots more advertising opportunity on Instagram. So clearly Instagram's growth is as such where, you know, more and more users are being added every day. There's more and more ad inventory. There's more and more opportunity to get your business, your organization in front of people if you did want to kind of raise awareness through paid media. Instagram also testing the ability to hide likes and like counts. So just this is about kind of trying to remove the anxiety and the kind of self-doubt that kind of predicates most people on social media, right? So yeah, I really like that. That becomes an option. So LinkedIn are working on a competitor to Clubhouse. This is what it's going to look like. Have no launch date for this yet, but me personally, I think this type of content format has a really natural home on LinkedIn. So yeah, I really like that. Some other really good updates around LinkedIn, video cover story. So this is live now, but you might want to check this on your own profile because LinkedIn take a while to roll it out to everyone. But you can, if you've got a cover story, you'll see a little like a highlighted circle around your avatar. And basically you can do like a 30-second video, like about me kind of video, which helps really bring your personal profile to life. And I absolutely love that. It's a fantastic way for people when you're networking so people can get a feel for who you are and what you do. And same with this creator mode, which helps you kind of like put in topics that you speak about and you focus on. And also this creator mode prioritizes the type of content that you create, and it prioritizes all of those posts that you've done historically in your profile as well. So it's a slightly different approach to your personal profile, that creator mode. LinkedIn Live's had some good updates as well. So you can see in a LinkedIn profile, if someone's going live, that live video renders in that kind of background image. Just really simple, but I really like that as a really engaging way. And I think what LinkedIn are doing to try and build community around an individual, yeah, I really like that trajectory. Moving on to LinkedIn, audio spaces, which you might have heard of before, are Twitter's approach to Clubhouse. It's coming to the desktop as well. It will be live on Android and iOS when they launch it. The launch date was meant to be April, so I guess they're gone a bit quiet again. So hopefully May, but that's going to then that's certainly going to take some dents out of Clubhouse in terms of Clubhouse's growth. That's for sure. I'm quite excited about that on Twitter. Twitter Fleets, which is Twitter Stories. They released it last year, but now kind of allowing much more creativity and customization of those through the use of stickers. As you've seen, Twitter has started to see significant growth again. So it's just another way to create more engaging content. Talking about engaging content is that you can now add kind of these little backgrounds to your tweets on your fleets. Now, what a horrible thing to say. So like, it's just, yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister, but ultimately fleets, which is Twitter Stories, gives you an opportunity to kind of highlight certain tweets you really want to kind of bring out, and these backgrounds really start to bring your tweets to life as well. So it's a good way to potentially drive engagement, provided you've got a decent follower base on Twitter already. Now, Twitter's always been a bit conspicuous by its absence, in the sense that it doesn't have, you know, a difference between a personal and a company profile like Facebook, or on LinkedIn. So Twitter's always just had the notion of a profile, whether it's personal or business. So they're looking at changing that and moving to professional profiles. This is not live yet, but coming up. But it also helps businesses and organizations put in important information about them and have bit more of a kind of bio, as you can see. Like we've got get direction, contact, more details being able to be added in the bio, links to certain things. So I think for public sector organizations, that actually looks like quite an interesting one. Twitter community in testing. This is basically their approach to Facebook groups. They haven't officially announced this yet, but this is kind of some sneaky peeks of it being shown by someone that's kind of found it on Twitter. That I see that as a really nice next step for Twitter. As the community's growing, as we're starting to see kind of more and more interaction, community becomes the next place for it. So same as Facebook groups, any place that can help connect people around a certain community is a good thing in my book. And talking of that community, it's going to take on an extra meaning for Twitter, because they're now pushing towards super follows, which basically super follows means people can pay a small monthly subscription to receive some kind of extra benefits from that individual and receive exclusive content. For example, now Twitter is starting to show some examples here where, you know, through super follows, they might get a supporter badge, subscriber only newsletters, access to exclusive content, deals and discounts on community access, like that community that we were just talking about. So we're starting to see that evolution around, as I said earlier, about how individuals can start to monetize their own content on these platforms. And when people start to monetize their content on these platforms, naturally, all of these platforms being Twitter, Facebook, etc., will get a little kind of rake off of that money, which then decreases the reliance on ads. When these platforms become less reliant on ads, rather, then that becomes more of a focus around organic content. So you can see how a lot of this stuff is interlinked. So potentially social media will become actually a healthier place as a result of it becoming more focused on individuals, smaller communities, people potentially paying to have access to these communities, less reliance on ads, meaning more kind of valuable content in a feed. So maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but yeah, I'm hoping that's the kind of trajectory we're on. And Twitter also kind of testing the notion of tipping. All of these platforms are on this at the moment, which is it's a really simple way of people kind of paying money to get access to something simple. It's not a subscription, it's just kind of like a one-off. But you can start to see how that would be valuable in charity sectors through donations or something like that. So, this ability to start monetizing it, whatever it is, whether it's donations, whether it's kind of financial gain, whatever. But you're really starting to see this is the next evolution of social. And it's kind of interesting in the same way like we covered what Facebook are doing and their whole objective to drive engagement. When you look at Twitter's growth objectives, you can start to see why all of these changes are manifesting. Because over the next 3 years, Twitter's going to try and add 123 million more users. Twitter only added 83 million in the last 3 years, so that's a significant uptick, and they're trying to double their revenue. They've got so many new things happening, like audio spaces, Fleets is new, community we just spoke about, their kind of Facebook group, subscriptions like super follows, newsletters we discussed last month. So much happening on Twitter. Interesting one to watch. Right, we can go a bit quicker because they are, over those 4 platforms, I think it was, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. That's where the lion's share of the updates are. So let's fly through. Pinterest rolling out the Shopify partnership to 27 countries. This is about social commerce and being able to sell products online through Pinterest. YouTube are removing the dislike function and stopping the like counts of that. So once again, helping people feel it's a safe space to share social without fear of kind of negative ramifications. You'll see that a trend across all of those platforms. Snapchat are also looking at remixing as well. So same thing that was popularized, that we spoke about earlier, popularized by TikTok, now moving on to Snapchat. Snapchat's growth been really good. 280 million daily active users, 280 million people log in every single day, which is a 22% increase year over year. Talking of TikTok, they're releasing playlists, which is a really nice way that you can aggregate and organize all of your TikToks into a nice consistent playlist. Like you can organize a playlist on YouTube, which kind of structures all of your content around a certain theme or topic. So as you can see, this one, there's a playlist around social media help, for example. And this is where like TikTok and educational content goes hand in hand. So yeah, I really like that as an update. One of the things that's a big barrier for people on TikTok in general is about creativity and the amount of time it takes to create content for TikTok. This new video editor is a free thing from TikTok that allows you to take your videos and make them suitable for TikTok. Haven't used it personally, but anything that helps improve the creative process within TikTok, I'm all for. Auto captions, they've rolled that out, and that's available right now. Brilliant update, fantastic for accessibility. I think we all know what captions and transcripts look like. So, that's good. That means we don't actually need to add that into our kind of video editing process, thinking about captions, because it's going to be here automatically. So hopefully with those last 2 updates, bringing down the kind of the barrier to entry of TikTok a little bit. And this is definitely a good one because, there's a lot of businesses, us included, where we're like, we know we should be on TikTok, we should be doing something with it, but kind of time and creativity prove like 2 big barriers for us. So I'm sure for many other businesses too. So this business creative hub is a really nice place. It's a free resource that you can go to look at how other businesses are using TikTok, things that are working well, etc. So yeah, good source of inspiration. But the kind of thing that is driving TikTok's growth is that more than any other app that we've covered, any other social media network, more people spend more time on TikTok than any other platform. And that is fundamental to why you don't stop hearing about TikTok and why content's doing so well is because there's more people on it for a longer period of time, which means more content can be consumed. So that's driving their growth, just simply people spending more time on the app. Clubhouse are also going down the payments route. So the same thing that we saw with Twitter tipping. It's interesting. You're starting to see all of these platforms apply this kind of payments feature. Clubhouse's growth is slowing. This is the ranking of the amount of downloads of the app and where it ranks in the iPhone App Store. So we see it going kind of downwards, although they've just been valued at $4 billion through their latest fundraise. So it's not going anywhere. But I have a feeling that Clubhouse, it will be a bit of a niche platform rather than the platform for audio first. And here you can see a mix of the audiences and the types of topics that are kind of being discussed at the moment. So these are the kind of key densities of those conversations. Talk about audio first social. Discord is I would usually have called this a bit of a niche product because Discord is predominantly a community for gamers, fantastic for outreaching a certain demographic, but they've started to pivot their business away from being gamers to being a kind of everyone platform. So they're kind of taking on Clubhouse with stage channels. They have 100 million monthly active users, which is about 10 times the size of Clubhouse, more than that, probably about 20 times the size of Clubhouse. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. But and then Reddit have done the same. Reddit Talk. Reddit is a very fast growing platform. I personally don't use Reddit to publish any content, but I personally use Reddit a lot for like research and discovery and looking what the community are saying about, certain topics. So I find it really good for that. Would I be falling over myself to jump on these brand new platforms if you don't have an audience there already? Not necessarily, but it's kind of good to see how the evolution of audio is growing. So we got
on 41 minutes.
we got there. So yeah, I think there's just kind of 4 themes to summarize that really quickly. Private social networks continue to grow. This iOS update is going to have interesting impact for paid ads, but as I've been saying all along, we're going to see the kind of a new dawn of organic content over time and less reliance on ads and paid. But fundamentally, privacy is absolutely a thing. Smaller communities seems to absolutely be a trend. Audio first. It's clear to see how many of the social networks are thinking audio first, and that's a cue for us to think about that too. And that's kind of the purpose of the session. Not to say you suddenly need to be on all of these things that I've mentioned, but just kind of taking these themes and starting to help them inform your content strategy. So audio first, I would definitely start thinking about that already. Remixing will be a key content consideration going forward, and how content that you create can be kind of shared and repurposed by others. That requires you'd probably want to look in that business creative hub that I showed earlier on TikTok to get some ideas around that, because the real barrier to that is creativity, but there will be great opportunity in that. And in general, as I've been saying throughout the whole time, tipping and creative monetization, marking a shift away from social media's reliance on ads. So we're starting to see the kind of evolution of businesses monetizing, or individuals monetizing content directly in the feed without having to take people away to other places. Right, now I'm done.
Well done, Andy. Take a breather. That was absolutely epic. Thank you so much. All I can say is social media is evolving. It's almost like it's growing up and it's adulting, right?
Yeah.
A couple of big takeaways for me is that constant shift to community, the shift to niche audiences, and you know what? I think they're moving before they're pushed off a cliff edge, because privacy is becoming the big game changer in the world of social networks. And the iOS 14 update from Apple is only a precursor to us living in a cookieless world, which Google is preparing for. And so people are going to see their numbers drop. The platforms are going to be first hit, then it's going to have an impact on advertising revenue. So it feels to me that they're preempting a sea change in what's coming down the track. We've had GDPR in Europe since 2018. America is going to get something similar. California has its own data protection law, but this is something bigger. This is, users saying, I care about my data. Now I know where it's going. And so, yeah, the likes of tipping, the likes of super follows, it's like the Patreon model where you're paying for really good content. We see mainstream media are now having to go down the route of paywalls for their content in order to fund it. I'm like you with your optimism. I think that would be a good thing. And I think that the vitriol, the hate, the kind of horribleness that exists on social, if we can migrate to a tribe of people where we can interact safely and in a more engaged way, might be the way of the future in terms of micro influencers. You're going to get the kind of opposing view here, saying, well, Joanne, you know what? That almost feels like an echo chamber to me. But you know what? We can't all consume the 1,500 posts that come into our Facebook newsfeed every day. That's just not possible. So algorithms are already controlling what you're seeing. But where do I start? Maybe content and the long game. I subscribe to that model of marketing. And actually my next podcast episode is going to be with an organization that are really investing in the long form content and using social to amplify. But tell us a little bit about how you guys are aggregating, because I saw your content analytics dashboard and I was like, oh, show me that a little bit closer. So tell us what you're doing, because metrics are always a hurdle for marketers to get over.
Yeah, I might actually share something.
Bring it back up.
Yeah, so hold on. Let me share my screen in a second. I'm just finding something very, very quickly, because rather than me talk for 5 minutes, best context I can give is sharing it. So hopefully.
All this based on need, client feedback.
So this is based on need, plus us being able to demonstrate to our investors, why we're hiring more people in our content marketing team and why we do content. Plus, it's quite important that we do content and we see the value of it, considering this is what we purvey to everyone else, right? So, this kind of creates a bit of a precedent and an expectation for the business, right? Because we spend our lives extolling the virtues of content marketing and talking about it as we've done today. So it's important that we kind of demonstrate that practice and live our values. So that's the purpose of it. So what I kind of want to share with you really, really quickly is that we have 5 kind of key assets. So this is our Q1 results. Some of this data is accurate. Some of it is kind of like anonymized just for data security. But anyway, so we have 5 kind of key assets. We run webinars. We have kind of content downloads, which are kind of like help guides, for example, right? Or templates, things that are just fundamentally helpful. We have like strategy sessions. So these are kind of live sessions that we run to help people build their content strategies. We have our learning academy and our blog. Basically, our learning academy puts all of the other things together in kind of learning journey. Anyway, they're the 5 kind of assets that we have, and we market all of those. These are our 5 things that we try and merchandise. We call these our kind of pillars, if you will. And these kind of pillars are the thing that makes up all of everything that we'll publish across our social channels, across every channel, email, social, etc. So we track everything using a HubSpot, which is our kind of CRM, which helps manage all of this. And, these are the kind of downloads that we get and registrations. And then what we try and do is track the amount of people that subscribe to this. So people just literally downloaded it and took no further action. People that then took a trial of Content Cal, then kind of, took it further and then became a customer. So then we break down those customers across asset type. So out of those customers, how did they find us? Was it a webinar or whatever? So you can start to kind of back up the content that you're doing into a revenue model. Now, I appreciate we're a B2B business, not a public sector organization. It won't be driven by revenue. Mm-hmm. it will be driven by other metrics.
Yeah.
But being able to kind of reverse it in this way and starting to look at like how engagement's increased over time, because you might not get like huge amounts of likes, you know, on one single post, but when you start to step back and look at it over time, like we look over 3 months, typically over a quarter, then you can start to see, you know, more broadly, appreciate these are financial metrics, but you'd use something else. Like we can see conversion rate by asset type. So how many people that come in through a webinar will then take a further action. And that will be a really important one, because this is about kind of community engagement, right? So who's going to take a further action? For us, we then kind of determine, you know, what our kind of average sales prices per asset type. So ultimately we can now look about our conversion rate and look at our average sales price and start to understand exactly how much people are likely to buy, their propensity to buy. And then we have then what we can really back that up into is an economic value per every new contact that we that signs up to any piece of content. So now we can start to invest in that appropriately, because you know, if we have 100 signups to a webinar, if that webinar cost us, you know, £5,100, we know we're kind of in line with our ROI. So appreciate, like I said, B2B business, this is how we track ROI. You couldn't do this in a month. You have to do this over a longer period of time, because these results take time to mature. But fundamentally, it might not be might not be financial metrics, but anything that you want to tie this to, as long as you can track it, and as long as it's in line with your overall business objectives. Of course, our business objectives are financially motivated because we're backed by investors. This is what they want to see. But hopefully that sheds some light on what I was saying.
That's brilliant. And what you've just created here is your own attribution model. Yeah. So you're being able to attribute a commercial value on the content that is driving the business through awareness, consideration, and ultimately conversion. It's a really good model, and I can totally flip it and see how the economic metrics there could become reputational metrics. You know, so absolutely, because if I'm teaching, and when I'm teaching government and public sector, I'm all about the content. I'm like, the place where your truth is hidden are in your words, in your language, and in your responses. And the only place where people are going to see those are on the social platforms or on the website, and being more visible. So I think that was a brilliant exercise. The other big trend, and we noted it last month, was speech content. I mean, I just shake my head in, what's the word, in complete, maybe it's awe, but I mean, Mark Zuckerberg does not want to be left out of any party online, does he? You know, if there's an audio party happening over at Clubhouse, he's like, well, we want to have an audio party too. It's unbelievable. And I'm almost looking at Clubhouse and going, guys, you've done all the hard work. You've kind of broken into the market, created the product, and then we've got Twitter and Facebook, and maybe LinkedIn stepping into the breach. But do you think that people will be more comfortable with audio than video? Is this the middle ground between photos and text and video that maybe we've been waiting for?
I'm hoping so. And for me, it serves a few purposes. So one, it's a different type of content which provides better accessibility, right? Accessibility in one regard. But particularly, you know, the thing that I've talking about accessibility, the thing I didn't like about Clubhouse is the fact there is no auto subtitles. There is no transcript thereafter, whereas audio spaces are doing that, as are Facebook. So better accessibility. So I like that. Variety of content, brilliant. But also, I think probably as important as that is from a creator's perspective, it's the kind of production value you need to invest in audio. It's so much lower than anything else, right? If you're trying to make a graphic, an infographic, for example, you know, ship it off to a designer, try and go back through numerous revisions, or if you're trying to do a video, yeah, exactly, same process, right? But much longer. Doing audio was
open mouth.
Barry. Yeah, say again.
Just speak. I mean, I always talk. I'm a broadcast journalist by trade, so I am hugely fond of audio as a medium. It's my favorite for obvious reasons. But I also talk to my students and clients about the powerful stream of consciousness that comes from the brain to the mouth. And when we go from the brain to the pen or the keyboard, we are editing ourselves. But when we're thinking out loud, and it's so rich, it's so human. If you ever get a transcript, if I got a transcript of this, and we'd have all our ums and ahs, and the sentences wouldn't really make sense, perhaps in some areas as the written word, but just the authenticity and the engagement level of listening to somebody speak. And now with the simultaneous growth in podcasting, I think, for government and public sector, and even for anyone, it really is a place where you should step in and get your tribe. And actually, I love the fact that maybe the mainstream channels introducing it, maybe people might be a bit more likely to use it than, hey, I can't download another app on my phone. I just can't do it.
Exactly. So if it were me, my kind of guidance for anyone, because I know it's sometimes overwhelming to go, wow, there's so many platforms. It's just like, I would be thinking right now about what audio first or speech might look like for you and your business and your strategy. And then I would then kind of keep my powder dry for a bit, because a lot of stuff is gonna play out, right? Twitter Audio Spaces hasn't come out. I'll wait for Facebook, because they're going to make massive bangs, those platforms, when they launch, and they're going to give them a huge amount of impetus in the algorithm. So what you really want to do is be in a position where you're not like, oh, it's launched, what should we do? Be like, it's launched, let's activate. So you've got a few months to think about this. And I think for most businesses that have thoughtful, orientated content, that isn't, and you find it harder to go into the kind of more humor, 15-second fun stuff like it would constitute TikTok. For me, this is brilliant, right? So I think it's exciting. I think it's one of the best kind of both business to business and for a public sector organization, for those ones that thrive on more detail towards the content. Absolutely love audio first for that.
Yeah, they're also making more room for ads. I mean, they run out of space on newsfeed for ad. So now they're introducing ads like, to IGTV. They've already been to stories. So, these businesses are massive, but they're also going to hurt in a cookieless world and in a data protection world. But ads are just a reality, aren't they? I mean, if we want to consume free content, then we've got to suck up the advertising that's coming in the middle, right?
For now, definitely. And it serves its purpose, right? Ads will never kind of completely go away, right? Because too many users on that platform. Social media is mainstream media now, right?
I said this at a webinar on Friday, and they couldn't see me, but I nearly got my head virtually cut off. I need to have a webinar with journalists where we discuss this, because it really upsets mainstream media. But I agree with you. Social media is mainstream media.
There's no difference. Yeah. It's interesting. I bet that kind of ruffles some feathers, that line of conversation. But yeah, so ads won't completely go away, but the way that it's going to start to balance out, as I'll end up repeating myself, but yeah, I think we're on a good trajectory. And you speak about tribes a lot, smaller communities. For me, that's where it's at, and continues to be where it's going to be at too. So that's good.
Well, what a whirlwind it has been. This has been a really meaty month, hasn't it?
Yes, it really is.
Network scene. I mean, you've been busy consuming that. Thank you so much, as always. What I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to list all of these things so that people can read it back. They can watch it back, and but lots to think about. And what I always appreciate is how you direct us with strategy too. You always tell us what we should be listening to, maybe how strategically we should be approaching, and maybe what we should wait to evolve. But Andy, as always, thank you so much. Where can people find out more about Content Cal before we wrap up?
Oh yeah, we're on contentcal.io, but if you just Google Content Cal, you'll find us. But yeah, and always happy to chat social media content strategy. And there's a free trial if you want to test out Content Cal, and that new analytics stuff is really good. So there's my plug over.
Well, absolutely have a plug, because it's a great platform, and the fact that you've added analytics too, even better. So guys, go ahead and check it out. Andy, I'll see you on the last Tuesday of the next month, which will bring us into May. But you have a great week, and we're watching over here from Ireland over to the UK, and we've got total FOMO because we're still in level 5, and you guys are getting your hair cut, going to pubs outdoors, and all of that great stuff.
Yeah, I'm still slightly. I think I've turned into a agoraphobic actually over this time, so I haven't left my house. But yeah, but thank you for hosting me. I appreciate it as always.
Okay, see you next month.